Greetings, folks. This is Wednesday, April the 24th, 2019. I'm Tom Weineweaver, and this is my commentary. And if you see by the screen, you see that I'm saying that that conservatives support murdering Americans. And the reason I say that is they are pro-Israel. That means Israel can do no wrong. If they support Israel, they support everything Israel does, including the attack on the USS Liberty on June 8th, 1967. That killed 34 Americans. Killed 34 Americans. You won't hear conservative talkers tell the truth about what happened to the USS Liberty. Why? Because they don't want you to know the kind of government Israel is. Second, they've murdered Rachel Corrie. And conservatives think that's okay. Here's Rachel Corrie, born in the state of Washington. She was 23 years old at the time. It was on March the 16th, 2003, when Israeli force member, they were bulldozing Palestinian homes. And Rachel Corrie stood up against that. Now, they had reason. They could see her. And if he did, he was blind. I mean, she had on one of those vests that just glows, especially when the sun's hitting it. So, for any driver of that bulldozer to say he didn't see her, bull. Anyway, so they murdered Rachel Corrie. Then, of course, but that's okay. It was Israel doing it. So conservatives think it was okay for them to murder Rachel Corrie. In fact, they probably twist the facts and say, well, it really wasn't murder. Bull. So, and then Israel committed espionage against the United States. Not once, but several times. And, but that's okay. It was Israel. It's okay for them to spy on the American people, spy on our government, and sell off what they find out to foreign countries like China. That's okay, because Israel is doing it. And of course, there are those of us who believe that Israel had a great deal to do with 9/11. Okay? I'm one of them. I believe Israel did 9/11. But that's okay. It's Israel. We don't care how many Americans they kill, because they are Israel. They are God's chosen people. And we need to support them no matter what they do. Even kill Americans. Now, what makes me say this? Well, it's the way conservatives are treating Representative Ilhan Omar. I've already talked about Glenn Beck. Now I want to talk about Rush Limbaugh. This is a transcript. I'll give you the link to this, by the way. This is a transcript of the Rush Limbaugh show dated March the 5th, 2019. It's entitled, "What's Really Going On with Ilhan Omar?" Rush speaking. Now, let's move to Ilhan Omar. This is one of these many circumstances where nobody has the guts to say what's really going on here, particularly in the Democratic Party. Stop the tape! I couldn't resist that. Okay, yeah, what is really going on, Rush? What's really going on is that you are attacking her because you're pro-Israel. Simple as that. You support the murderous ways of the Israeli government. How they've killed 34 in the USS Liberty. Well, I've already went through that. I mean, Rush, how many more people does Israel have to murder? How many more Americans do they have to kill that will make it wrong? Okay, let's get back to it. Back to the article. So Ilhan Omar, she's from Minnesota, and she won fame for demanding to be able to wear the headpiece, the hijab, on the floor of the House of Representatives. And everybody, oh sure, whatever you want, just don't blow us up. Whatever you want, just don't do any terrorism. If you want to wear it, wear it. So, she got the idea that nobody was going to oppose her. She hates Jews. Stop the tape. What in the world has she ever said that indicates that she hates Jews? Huh? What has she said? There's nothing she said. And this is what conservatives do. This is what a lot of people do. They lump Israel, the government Israel, with all Jews. And that's not the case. All Jews do not support Israel. Anyway, continuing. She's more than an anti-Semite. She's from Somalia. She is an Islamist. And she hates Jews. Jews are the problem in the world to her and many other people like her. And so when the Democrats have these ceremonies where they have to pledge solidarity with Israel, well, Omar doesn't participate. Now, neither would I participate. The Jews are the problem, he continues. Jews are the problem. I'm not going to swear allegiance to Israel. And let me tell you something. If I were president of the United States, I wouldn't swear allegiance to Israel either. Yeah, I said that because, let me tell you something. If I win the lottery, and that's a big if, but if I ever did win the lottery, that would help me pay for my campaign. So if you hear that I won the lottery, watch out. Anyway. Okay, so Rush, big mistake, Rush, painting all of Jews with the same brush. Okay, so now the Democrat, back to the transcription. So now the Democrats have a problem because they've got a rabidly anti-Semitic member of Congress who is a freshman and is getting all kinds of media attention, media acclaim. Representative Ilhan Omar is catching flack on Twitter yet again for suggesting the U.S. politicians are being forced to pledge allegiance to Israel. And aren't they? I mean, listen, she's in Congress. She might know a thing or two about that. And I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt that members of Congress pledge allegiance to Israel. Anyway, so let's see. I don't want to read the whole thing, but you get the picture. You get the picture. These conservatives, numbskulls, they just don't understand what's going on, do they? Of course, they're part of the problem. They support Israel, and so the conservative movement supports Israel. If only Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and Glenn Beck would tell the truth about Israel, maybe we can change this. Maybe this thing would be changed. But they're not going to do that. They're pro-Israel. They're probably being paid off by Israeli operatives. I mean, maybe Roger Ailes was one of them. He got Rush Limbaugh started back in 1988. Folks, conservatives are pro-Israel. Therefore, they favor the murder of Americans by Israel. You want to challenge that? Go ahead. Leave a comment below. I want to hear what you say. Why do conservatives support Israel? Why is it that the support of Israel does not include their murderous ways? You see, if you support Israel, you also support the bombing of Gaza. You also support the murder of innocent Palestinians. And Sean Hannity's a Catholic. Hey, Pope, you ought to defrock him. Get rid of him. Tell him you can't be a Catholic if you support Israel. I mean, some church somewhere should say you can't be a member here if you support Israel. Because supporting Israel is a sin. You want me to prove that biblically? Biblically, Israel doesn't even exist anymore. I mean, you had the prophecies of the New Testament about the last days. The last days of what? And if you study it, as I have done, it's the last days of the Old Covenant. Part of that was accomplished on the cross. And so, the Old Covenant was dead. Or dying, because Paul said it's fading away. Hebrews says it's fading away. It's dying. So the Old Covenant, while still partially in force in the book of Hebrews, it was dying. It was fading away. And as of today, it doesn't exist. Israel, the nation of Israel, or actually Israel, didn't exist for a long time, even at the time of Christ. Israel became the northern kingdom, and the northern kingdom was conquered. And so Israel didn't exist for a long time. Judea did. The southern kingdom survived. But you see, I'll bet you none of these conservatives know that. I know it because I studied the Bible. And I've studied history of the Bible. And so, I mean, conservatives, when it comes to Israel, are stupid. I mean, if they studied the truth, also, why else? Israel is not God's chosen people, for example. I mean, a lot of our foreign policy is based on on that fallacy that Israel is God's chosen people. But Israel is not God's chosen people. Only Christ Christ, according to to Galatians 3, Christ is the seed of Abraham. And those who belong to Christ are the seed of Abraham. And that is where Israel is today, in Christ. Christ is the chosen one. And those people who are in Christ are the chosen ones. They are the chosen people of God. Israel is not, because they reject Christ. You cannot be God's chosen people if you're not in Christ. Now that's what the Bible teaches, folks. But conservatives still call Israel God's chosen people. But they're not. They're imposters. Anyway, and they don't follow any part of the Bible. They follow something called the Talmud. Anyway, they don't follow the Torah. Now, I can respect on a political level Jews that follow the Torah. Although I don't agree with them, the way to the Father is through Christ. So I don't agree with any other religion other than that. I don't. That includes Islam. But that doesn't mean, from a political standpoint, I can't agree with them on certain issues. I certainly do. So, by the way, not all Jews are the same, and I've made this point I don't know how many times. First of all, the people of Israel aren't Jews. You see, the word Jew means Judean. And in order to be a Judean, you should have ancestry from Judea. Today, the people of Israel do not have ancestry from Judea. So it's impossible for them to be Jews. Anyway. I mean, listen, you've got to study history. Might help to study archaeology, although I don't know why. But, anything of a historical nature, you've got to learn the truth about it. These people in Israel today are not Israel. They are not true Jews. They are imposters. And you've got these conservative talkers like Rush Limbaugh, who supports Israel above anything else, even our own Constitution. They support Israel's big money machine in the Congress of the United States. They support that. I mean, when Chuck Schumer wanted to stop people from speaking anything bad about Israel, where were conservatives on that? Okay, so here's the thing. Rush Limbaugh will not tell you the truth about the USS Liberty. At least he hasn't up to this point. I don't listen to him much anymore, but I know during the times I was listening to him, and he never once mentioned the USS Liberty. Never once. That's why when I start doing these commentaries, I said I am going to go places where Rush Limbaugh fears to trod. Of course, I was wrong about the English there. I should have said fears to tread. But fears to trod because he has never trotted there. He's never said the truth about the USS Liberty. He'd never said the truth about Rachel Corrie. He never said the truth about 9/11. And he wouldn't tell the truth about the Bush's involvement in 9/11 either. So, by the way they treat Ilhan Omar, I can tell that they are so pro-Israel that the truth doesn't matter to them. They support everything Israel does, including the murder of Americans. Alright. That's my commentary for today. Thank you for listening.